Good day to you. Conor McMillen here. I'm an IFS-trained life coach. I was trained in IFS 10 years ago now, and I've been working with clients using the IFS modality for 10 years. My main mission, as you know if you watch this channel, is to help individuals like yourself learn to use IFS on themselves so that you can be empowered in your own growth and your own healing and don't necessarily need outside resources to do that. I really want people to feel like they can take control of their healing and their integration process, and that's really what this channel is all about. So today I wanted to share an exercise that I have created for clients, and this is based on an exercise I created for myself. So I know that it works. It tends to work for most clients that I give it to. It may or may not be applicable for you, but it's definitely worth checking out. There's absolutely an IFS, like a strong IFS component to this exercise, but it's also a little bit different than perhaps what you may find from an IFS therapist. So this is all about processing fear. It's about learning to be with parts that hold on to fear in a way that allows them to be fully seen and allows them to actually be fully felt. So we're going to talk about, what is fear, what's happening there from an IFS perspective, what can kind of keep fear being stuck in our system, and then how to help ourselves move through fear. So let's jump into fearful parts. If we're talking about from an IFS perspective, as you know, we have all of these different parts in our system. And it could be true for you that you have a singular part that you would name my fear part. And that's the one part of you that experiences fear. And that's kind of what it does, at least in this stage of the game. It's like, that's my fear part. Or it could be that you have different parts and those parts experience fear from time to time. You wouldn't necessarily label them as, that's my fear part. So it just depends on your own system. It also depends on how you want to view your system. Because to me, IFS should not be taken so literally that it's constricting the way that you view your system. I'm really not a fan of dogmatic views on IFS, such that you name, I have this part, and that's what it is forever and endlessly. It's a perspective. It's a way of understanding your system. If it's helpful, great. If it's not, then maybe there's other alternative ways to view your system. Or there's amendments to the IFS perspective that are more beneficial for you. We can talk about, in this scenario, this part of you is experiencing fear. So you're noticing, feeling fear in your system. The first step in helping yourself is by identifying this fear as a part of you. It's not the entirety of you that's fearful, it's a part of you that's fearful. That step in itself should allow for a little more spaciousness and relaxation, but most importantly, it allows a separation between the intense emotion of fear and the more grounded, relaxed, calm, curious, and compassionate state of being that we refer to in IFS called self. So identifying that fear is a part of you, dropping more into self. The second thing that I would recommend looking for is, this is very often the case, is that we have parts that are afraid of parts that feel fear. So there's fear about the fear. And the reason that's significant is those are two different types of fears. You have the fear that maybe is based on something that's happening in your external reality, some concern about something that could happen or that did happen, and that's its own process. But then you also may have a part that's actually afraid of feeling that fear. So there's an additional layer that you need to be looking at in order to get to this fear about the external reality. This part that may feel fear about the fear, simply being aware that could exist, can, again, allow enough spaciousness for you to access more of your self-led energy and to be able to appropriately hold both places. It can also help this part relax more by being seen by you. So if you do have this extra layer, this part that is afraid of the fear, it's necessary in most cases to sit with that part first and to ask that part or to acknowledge that part and say, hey, it seems like you're afraid of this fear. Can you tell me about what it is that you're feeling, why it is that you're holding that fear towards this other fear part? And in hearing that process, you want to acknowledge it, you want to have compassion for it, and you want to offer it some time for it to relax. And if it's willing to do that, fantastic. And if it's not, then that means that there's just more investigating, more curiosity, and more compassion to hold for that part. So assuming that we can kind of have enough spaciousness with this part that may be having fear about the fear part, assuming that there's enough spaciousness for that part to relax over here. Then what we want to do is take that fear part and say, hey, let's spend some time together. There's 2 recommendations that I have for spending time with this part. One is to lay down in bed, close your eyes, and be with that part. Sometimes that can be a little too intense. It can even feel kind of unsafe. So in that case, it could be helpful to take that part on a walk. So you literally say, let's go on a walk together and let's be with each other. And I want to kind of learn what's going on with you. Most of the time, if you're going to be laying in bed with your eyes closed, that may allow for a deeper connection, but it also might be slightly more intense. And therefore, if you do have concerns about being overwhelmed, going on a walk and kind of staying connected with, the outside reality can sometimes help you stay grounded. This fear, generally when we have fear, we are feeling it. And it's strong and oftentimes it can be intense, oftentimes it can be overwhelming. Connected to that fear is a story. And it's a story about a potential that could happen. And what we want to do is really hear that story. We want to be with that story. We actually want to, as best we can and in as safe a way as possible, experience that story. But what often happens with fear is that we're kind of like not fully allowing that story to unfold. We're kind of keeping it like, oh no, like don't fully unfold. That's scary and too overwhelming. And I'll just keep it kind of right here where it's just intense and nothing happens and there's no progress. It's kind of stuck. So in order to unstuck it, we need to allow spaciousness for that fear part to tell us the whole story and to experience the potential of that whole story. When we can allow that story to unfold, and sometimes what I say to people is, what's the worst case scenario? Can you hear, can you be with, can you sense the worst case scenario? If this happens, it means that this will happen, it means that this will happen, it means that this will happen. And if that happens, that feels really scary. We want to get all the way to the conclusion of the fear. Many times, if we really follow the fear through, we may find death at the end, a fear of death. And it may sound really extreme in some cases. Like, for example, there could be a social situation where you're afraid to post something on Facebook, for example. You want to share a little piece of your life and you feel afraid of posting on Facebook. How could that possibly be associated with death? But how that could be associated with death is you post something on Facebook, everyone rejects you, you're shunned, and then you are kicked out of the tribe. You're kicked out of community. You have no outside help and no outside resources, which in our deep understanding of the world, if we don't have tribe, if we don't have community, then we will die. We have to face the world on our own. Wild animals and famine and all these things that used to exist for us for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that's deeply ingrained in our nervous system. So our response to being rejected or kicked out of the tribe is a fear of death. So as crazy as it sounds, that posting something on Facebook is actually associated with this fear of death, it's helpful to have the awareness that it could be, so that you can follow that story through to get to the conclusion that this part is afraid that it's going to die. And for you, in your self-led position, to know that's just not really going to happen, So to find the full story, the full version of the fear, to allow that part to tell you the truest version, the longest version, the ultimate fear, allows you in your adult self, your self-led place, to integrate that fear and to understand that most of the time that fear is probably pretty extreme, and the possibility of that coming true is incredibly rare and probably even impossible. When you get to that conclusion and you say, like, I'm not going to die just because I post something on Facebook, that's not going to happen. It's not to turn around to that part and be like, hey, you're wrong, like that's not going to happen. It's to find safety in yourself. And it's to find security in yourself and peace in yourself. And that's the energy you want to offer to this part. You don't need to tell this part that it's wrong or to tell it to go away. We want to bring it closer to us. And by bringing it closer through hearing its story, finding security in ourselves, we offer that security to this part. And then that part can naturally relax. What are parts there for in the first place? When a part is feeling a lot and it has an emotion, it's there to send you a message. So we have to validate that message. We have to give that part time and space to tell us the message. Through the process of the story, what you're looking to do for yourself is to find acceptance with that possibility, and also to find safety and security with the version of the story that this fear part has to offer. It could be that at the end of this story, you still feel fear, and that's really okay. If you allow yourself to be with this part in a safe way and in a loving way, in a compassionate way, there will inevitably be more spaciousness and more integration potential for your system. So in my mind, this process can only do you good, even if seemingly at the end you feel the same. For me personally, I've had some fears that have come up that have felt really, really big and overwhelming. And I've used this exercise not just once, but multiple times around the same worst case scenario feeling, so that I could run through that possibility enough times that I could accept it again and again and again. So this exercise is something I created. It's called Follow the Fear. I do have it available for free in a written format on internalfamilysystems.org. You just go to the blogs section and you can find the written outline of how to do this Follow the Fear exercise. I will put a link in the description box down below. So please head over there and check out the exercise. You can also sign up for our newsletter and get a free guided meditation. If there's anything that we can do over here at internalfamilysystems.org, please let us know in the comments. Send me a personal email through our website. Any other way that you want to reach out, I am here to help. Hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll talk soon.